Hi everybody and welcome aboard. I'm Darren York from the Center for Teaching Arts and Technology. Today's session is something that actually many people request, and that is an overview of one of the two tools that are a little more complicated, not in the sense of hard, but just there's a little bit more complexity and a little bit more information than many of the D2L or momentum tools that we discuss. Today we're going to jump right in because we do only have, let's say, 20 to 25 minutes to talk about it, and we're going to talk about some quizzes. So if you've been considering doing quizzes in your course, whether it's traditional, online, blended, whichever format you follow, the first thing that you want to ask yourself is, what types of quiz options do I have available? Of course, we have all kinds of assessment that can be done: Dropbox assignments, discussion boards, projects, group projects. But when it comes to quiz time, what do you do and how do you do it? Over on the left of your screen, you're going to see that I've already got my momentum or D2L window open. I'm going to go inside of a fake class. This isn't a real course for obvious reasons, because I want you to be able to see what happens when you go inside the quizzes area and it's totally fresh. And it says right up front, you haven't created any quizzes, click new quiz to add a new quiz. Well, that's true, but before you even get started, first, a good orientation as to the two major areas is quite beneficial to most people. Up in the left-hand corner right here, you've got manage quizzes, which is this area, and then you've got question library. And I encourage you to think of these conceptually in a way that help you to understand what it is that they are. One of the things that you'll think of is, imagine that for this specific class, whatever it is that you teach, you've got a file folder on your desk that has 9 or 10 quizzes that you plan on giving to this course, this semester, to that specific group of students. And then over here you've got question library, and that's very different. If I click on question library, it takes me to an area that looks very similar, but conceptually in your mind you might want to think of that as a large file cabinet that sits in the back of your office, and it's a repository of all of the questions that you've got that you've accumulated over years and years and years. And some of them good, some of them not so good, but you've got a big repository, a big group of questions that you plan on using. Now, why would I want to start in the question library? Because in many ways, it's safer, it's easier, and it allows you to start feeling that just in case something goes wrong and you accidentally delete something on the front wall, you've still got this option, this repository in the background that you know that things won't be deleted back here. So when I'm inside the question library, what should I do first? I click on new, and one of the options is section. So let's do that. And let's say that I create a section or a folder called quiz 1. That then puts it on the wall for me, and that allows me to just have a good, strong organization pattern, because you don't want your question library to be cluttered with 1,000 questions up on the wall. So I've got a folder that I can put things in, and when I go inside of that, just by clicking right on the name of the folder, I can also create another section within that section. In other words, I can have a folder inside of a folder. I'm not going to do that, but I have that option so that I can have quiz 1, multiple choice folder, quiz 2, true, false, etc. Today, I'm just going to literally create a couple of questions or a few questions, and let's start with a true, false question. If I want to make my own question, I just click on new, and then the drop down true, false. It thinks a little bit. It gives me an option for a title. Titles are optional, and I'm going to encourage you, go ahead and just don't bother doing it. It will speed up the process, and it will also automatically display whatever you put in question text as your title. So just save yourself some time and go on down there. Where points are concerned, you could probably just get away with the 1 point default. The reason why, because later if you change your mind, it's very easy to change those points in a different place. Difficulty level, also, you could just leave it at the default. Some instructors like to rank their questions. These questions are hard, these are easy, etc. But you can also alter those at a later time. Here's your question text, and let's say that we create this question. Freud was a cognitive psychologist. And I just type my stuff in. You should also know that you do have the option to be able to copy and paste so that you're not limited. You don't have to type. You could copy and paste into there. And you've got your handy dandy HTML editor that allows you to insert pictures, links, tables, bold, italic, blah, blah, blah. I'm just going to move forward and go down to the bottom. Now when I get to the bottom, I notice I've got a true and a false. This question is false, so I would put 100. That's actually one of the most common mistakes right there. Most instructors would say, well, the question's worth a point. False is the right answer. I'm just going to put 1 in that blank. But what you're essentially saying is that false is 100% true. In other words, 100% the right answer. So, true gives you nothing. False gives you 100% credit. I'm ready to go save. I can also go save and copy. If I have multiple questions that are very similar to one another, and I only need to tweak 1 or 2 words, save and new, which will give me a new fresh batch, or I can preview the question right there. I'm going to click save and new just to show you what that's like. It saves my question and it brings me right back into a true-false question. So I can very quickly start building my repository. I'm going to cancel that out right fast. We can see that displayed on the wall. I can preview it right there. And I get a feeling for what that question looks like, both in its native form and in its graded form. Now, let's say that we create one more question. Let's say a multiple choice. Again, title, points, difficulty, all of those optional. Freud believed in what kind of mind? For multiple choice, I start off with 4 options at the bottom. I can add more options right here. Let's say I want to add one more. All I have to do is just fill these in. And then I can add more. And let's add that option just to show you how that happens. And then it puts it at the bottom. Now, whichever answer is correct, notice that I put 100 because, again, it's 100% correct. That allows me the luxury that if there's something else down in here I want to give half credit, I could put 50% or 25% or so forth to allow for partial credit. And that's why that's set up the way that it is. Now, I'm just going to click Save. And so now we've learned how to do a couple of things. Number one, we've learned how to start building a repository in the question library. And that's a smart thing to do. You should also, field cannot be empty. What did I do wrong? Let's go find my error. Oh, well, duh. The new one that I added in had to have something in it. So shame on me. And now it's up on the wall. Now, again, I can preview that question, and it'll show me exactly what I've got, what the right answer is, and if you got a partial credit. So now, just to review, what we've done, we've gone through and we've looked at this major area called the question library, a big repository that allows us to build file folders, folders within folders, and as many questions as we want. And let's do it, even though I'm not going to literally create questions in each type of format, let's talk about all those options. You've got true, false, multiple choice, multi-select, which is really about out of these 10, one or more may be checked, and it could be 1, or it could be all 10, or it could be 3 out of 10, could be 7 out of 10. That's a very good question if you want to get up on the high thinking level, critical thinking skills, to see, very precisely how much students know. Then you've got 2 flavors of free format questions, meaning long essay and short essay, which we call them essay. This system calls them long answer and short answer. Then you've got multiple short answer questions. That's more of a multiple fill in the blanks. And then the traditional fill in the blank. Matching, which is exactly what you think it is. Ordering, which is particularly helpful for chronological issues. which of these 5 events in history happened first versus last. Match them up in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then your math questions, including significant figures, and Likert questions, which are typically done on surveys. Agree, disagree, strongly disagree, that type of thing. So what we've got many options here. We can allow the creation of sections, many different types of questions, about a dozen different types. And you can also preview on the wall while you're inside of the question library. So if all of that teaches you about the question library, then what about actually creating a quiz? Well, let's go to the main wall, quizzes. And again, we're back in the manage quiz area. Our question library is right over here. To create a new quiz, we just click new quiz. We can also put that quiz into a category. And many times instructors say, well, I don't really understand what you mean by category. Do you want to have quizzes and tests, quizzes and exams, quizzes for credit, quizzes not for credit? Do you want a practice quiz or a trial quiz that that isn't going to count, but it gives students a mock exercise in what you want to do? Those are things that you could do for categories. I'm just going to put in category of quiz, and it puts it in there. The category thing is only for organization, and you should also know that that organization doesn't transfer over to the gradebook. This is just within the quiz area. And then right there, add edit questions. Add edit questions is where I literally pull in from my question library what it is that I want. So I click import, and I did that a little too fast. Let me slow down. Right here we have import, and I choose from an existing collection, which means something that I've already got. And there's my question library, which we just learned about. And it will show me everything that I've got. I click on that folder, and then the questions that I just created just now, they appear right there. So I can pull those in and click Save. That allows me to pull those questions in and do what I want to do. Now, an alternative method for all of that, let's imagine that I want to scramble my questions. In other words, instead of just pulling my questions in the order that I have them in the library, maybe I want to create a random section. So I click on New, and I see Random Section right there. I give it a name, and I myself always like to name my random sections Random Section. So Random Section 1, and then I save. I can go inside that random section and import exactly the same way that I imported before, except that now it's going to put those questions into a folder that allows me to scramble them up, and they can be pretty much anything you want. You could do 50 out of 200, you could do 50 out of 50. Since I just have 2 questions here because we're just doing pretend, I'm going to put 2 at 1 point each. And that means I pulled in my questions, and it'll scramble them up so that each individual student gets a different experience for that exam. And then I save. So let's go back and just do a real quick review. When we come into the area, by default, we enter into the Manage Quizzes area. And this is our place where we have actual quizzes going on for that specific class. We've created a quiz right there, and we've also pulled in questions from the question library and learned about how to set up our question library and get that nice and organized. But even for just an introductory lesson on quizzes, you're bound to have some other questions, and those other questions usually involve these tabs right here. As I set my questions up, one of the things that you'll probably want to know, can I put a description or a warning before the exam? Yes, you can. You just turn this on right here and put your note right there. And that would be for like customized instructions or customized, be very careful. Another example would be a chemistry professor who wants students to have 3 specific formulas before the test even begins. I can also set up pagers and footers. that can display throughout the entire test. Believe it or not, the most popular header for all exams is save your work often, because students, sometimes don't do what they should. I could say that about all of us, human beings, not just students. Now, let me go back to the properties page. Notice our tabs. We've gone through the properties tab already. Let's go to restrictions. Inactive means invisible to students. That means the instructor can see it, but the students cannot. Active means I can see it now. So, if I've got a quiz that's inactive, only I can see it. The students don't even see it. If it's active, they can see it, but they may or may not be able to play with it yet because the dates will either allow them to do that or not. As I move farther down, I can also set up advanced restrictions that a student can't take a quiz until they finish a particular module, or can't take this quiz until they've already passed a prior quiz. That's what the additional release conditions are about. And then for a variety of reasons, you have passwords and IP restrictions for security settings. At the very bottom, you have your time limits. Some instructors care a great deal about that. Some enforce it, some do not. And how late is late. In other words, if a student's 1 minute late, 2 minutes late, and what do you want a student to have happen to him or her when a late submission occurs. The most popular choice there is 1 minute. The most popular choice for time limit is in general about 45 seconds to 1.5 minutes per question. That's a good rule of thumb, not hard and fast, but in general. And I'm just going to put 45 to do a pretend, with a late limit of 1 minute. And that would mean that anyone who goes beyond the time limit and then the 1 minute grace would receive an automatic 0 for that quiz. And then down at the very bottom, what do you do when you've got a student who has to attend a funeral, a student who is hospitalized? That's what the advanced availability allows you to do, so that you can set normal rules up at the top and then have special exceptions at the bottom. That's also a very good place to know if you've got a student who needs extra time or extra conditions because they've registered with Disability Services in the Counseling Center. So, good place to know. I'm going to click Save to save my work, and then we'll finish out our last few tabs. For assessment, that allows you to connect that to your gradebook so that you can just shoot the score over automatically. The rubrics tool allows you to connect a quiz or test to a rubric that you've got set up in the system, and whether or not you want this automatically graded or not. If you want more than one attempt and what you want to do with those attempts, you've also got those at the bottom as well. Our last one, because reports doesn't really count, is submission views. Submission views is what do you want this quiz or test to show your student after he or she is finished. There is an automatic default which was voted on by a faculty senate, and it's set up in advance. The automatic default says your quiz has been submitted successfully, and it will show the score but nothing else. In other words, automatically, if you do nothing, the system will give them a note that says, yes, you have submitted successfully, it did go in, and it will show the score, and it shows it in a fraction format. Let's say 20 out of 20, score of 100. That's all it would show. If you want your students to be able to view individual questions, what they got wrong, what they got right, all of them, if you want them to see the answers, you have to modify that view and then save it down at the bottom. And the reason why I said report setup doesn't really count, I don't want you to feel that I'm being flippant. The reason why report setup is not necessarily something that happens very often is because every quiz has a view right there on the drop down that says statistics, and you can get some pretty good statistics. I'm actually going to shift this over to a real class so that you can see real statistics. Now, I don't want to violate federal laws, particularly when I'm recording this, but I do want you to feel that you don't have to set up a report in order to get good statistics for your quizzes. So, this can give you lots of statistics. I'm going to go right here. And notice that you've got a distribution, a mean, a median, a mode, and various other things. You can also start finding out things like the class average, high score, lowest score, etc. So again, those are some pretty good things to know as you're exploring your data. And that's one more reason. I'll also show you a real-world example of just how rich and full a question library can get, because each one of these folders contains hundreds and hundreds of questions. So again, this is just an introductory, just welcome to D2L, welcome to Momentum. And if you're interested in doing quizzes for your online course, your blended course, or your traditional course for a variety of reasons, then this might be able to help you walk through some of those basic steps and feel a little more comfortable. You should, of course, always know that you don't have to create your questions yourself. You can just give me a call or an email, and I can try to set up a situation where we can import questions from the publisher. You should also know that if you've already got a Word format test or a WordPerfect format test, and you've already got questions, if you can email that to me, then I can reformat them, do an HTML markup, and import them in a CSV file. Some of our instructors, Betty Glenn, for example, she's a computer instructor. She's often done that for herself. But most instructors don't really want to bother. It can be very tedious, time-consuming, and often frustrating because the process, it has to be done very, very exactly. It doesn't mean that I'm, all that. I'm just saying that very often instructors rely on us, CTAT, to import questions from publishers or import questions from a hard copy format. Having said all that, there is probably a good method that you could think of, a way to set up your courses so that you do have quizzing in some capacity, maybe just for practice or maybe for the real thing, regardless of whether you're teaching a normal traditional course or teaching a course that is fully online. And I appreciate your time, I appreciate your patience, and please make sure that you contact us with any questions that you have. Again, I'm Darren York for the Center for Teaching Arts and Technology. Thank you for your time. Have a good day.